Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! I've always been the baby of the family. At 14, I was not only the youngest in my immediate family, but also the youngest cousin in our extended clan. You think being the baby would mean I'd get pampered, right? Wrong. In my family, it meant I was everyone's go-to errand runner. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but sometimes they took advantage of my age and position. Oh, you're young, you can do it. Or, come on, help your elders out. Were phrases I heard way too often, and usually I'd comply without much fuss. That's just how it was. This particular story happened during summer break. My parents, older sister, and two of my cousins decided we should all go see the latest blockbuster at the local cinema. I was pretty excited. It was rare for all of us to do something together, and I've been dying to see this movie for weeks. The movie theater we went to was nothing fancy, but it had this cool feature where you could add your own butter to the popcorn. Sounds great, right? Well, it would have been if I wasn't the one constantly sent to do it. As we settled into our seats, my dad turned to me. Hey, could you go butter the popcorn? Sure, I guess. I wasn't thrilled, but I did it anyway. I mean, buttered popcorn is the best, right? So off I went, carefully applying a generous amount of butter to our large bucket of popcorn. I barely made it back to my seat when the preview started. I was just getting into them when my sister nudged me. The popcorn's kinda dry. Can you add more butter? But the previews just started. Come on, it'll take 1 minute. You won't miss much. Reluctantly, I got up again. By the time I returned, half the previews were over. I tried to focus on a screen, determined to enjoy the movie I've been waiting for. About 15 minutes into the film, just as the plot was picking up, my cousin leaned over. Hey, sorry, but could you add more butter? It's getting a bit stale. Are you serious? I just sat down. Please, you're closest to the aisle. It'll be quick, I promise. I bit my tongue and went. Again, by now, I was getting pretty irritated. I'd missed important parts of the movie and I felt like everyone's personal butter boy. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. About an hour into the movie, during a crucial scene, my other cousin tapped my shoulder. Hey, we're running low on butter. Mind getting some more? That was it. I'd had enough. But instead of exploding, a devious idea popped into my head. Fine. I stomped out of the theater, a plan forming in my mind. At the butter station, I went to town. I poured butter like there was no tomorrow. Every single kernel was drowning in the stuff. The bag was so saturated, it was starting to get soggy. As I walked back, I could feel butter seeping through the flimsy paper bag. It was gross, but I was satisfied with the outcome. I handed the dripping mess over to my family without a word and sat down to finally enjoy the rest of the movie. At first, they didn't seem to notice. They were too engrossed in the film. But then I heard whispers. Why is the popcorn so wet? Ah, my hands are all greasy. I pretended not to hear, keeping my eyes glued to the screen. As the movie progressed, I noticed them eating less and less popcorn. Eventually, someone set the bag on the floor between the seats. And that's when things got interesting. A small bottle of butter began to form under the bag. As the air conditioning kicked in, the butter started to solidify slightly, creating a slippery mess on the floor. By the time the credits rolled, there was a miniature butter river flowing down the slight incline of the theater floor. As we stood up to leave, my dad was the first victim. Whoa! He nearly fell, catching himself on a seat in front of him. One by one, my family members slipped and slipped their way out of the row, holding on to seats for dear life. Careful, it's slippery, I said with as straight a face as I could manage, carefully making my way out without incident. I've been prepared for the slick floor after all. As we exited the theater, I could hear the ushers talking. What the heck happened here? It looks like a butter bomb went off. My family was too embarrassed to say anything. They just hurried out, still wiping their greasy hands on napkins. On the car ride home, it was unusually quiet. And finally, my mom spoke up. Maybe next time we should just enjoy the popcorn as it comes. Everyone murmured in agreement. I hid my smile, looking out the window. They never asked me to butter the popcorn again after that day. And better yet, they started noticing when they were asking too much of me. It wasn't a big victory, but for a 14-year-old tired of being everyone's errand boy, it felt pretty darn good. Sometimes a little malicious compliance goes a long way in teaching people to appreciate you. And hey, at least I got to watch the rest of the movie in peace. I've been working at this butcher shop for about 5 years now. It's a family owned place, and the owner, who I just call boss, is like a second father to me. He took me in when I was struggling to find work after dropping out of college. My parents weren't too happy about that decision, but hey, life happens, right? Anyway, I've learned a lot working here: how to cut meat properly, how to deal with customers, and most importantly, how to keep my cool when things get tough. And boy, did things get tough last week. It was a busy Saturday afternoon and the shop was packed with our regulars getting their weekend supplies. I was behind the counter wrapping up an order for a regular, one of our sweetest customers, when this woman burst through the door. She marched right up to the counter, cutting in front of everyone else. I could feel the tension in the air as the other customers started muttering under their breath. The woman says, "I need meat for my children. Give it to me now." I tell her, "Ma'am, I'll be happy to help you, but there is a line. If you could just wait for your turn." "Do you see any children here?" "No, I'm a single mother, and I need to feed my kids. You should be giving me meat for free." I blinked, not sure if I'd heard her right. I looked around and I could see the other customers were just as confused as I was. "I'm sorry, but we can't give away our products for free. We have to make a living too." "You don't understand. I'm entitled to free food. I have 3 hungry children at home." By this point, some of the other customers had taken out their phones and started recording. I guess they sensed something big was about to go down. "Ma'am, I understand you're in a difficult situation, but we simply cannot give away our products. Perhaps I could direct you to some local food banks or—" "I don't want charity. I want the best meat you have, and I want it now." She was getting louder and more aggressive with each word. I could see Boss watching from the back, ready to step in if needed. But he always encouraged us to handle difficult customers on our own if we could. "I'm sorry, but I cannot help you. If you'd like to purchase something, I'll be happy to assist you once it's your turn." "You're useless. Where is your manager?" "He's in the back, but he'll tell you the same thing. We can't give away our products for free." She started pacing back and forth, her face getting redder by the second. Then she spotted our display fridge where we keep some of our premium cuts. Before I could react, she marched over to it and tried to yank the door open. "But we keep it locked for security reasons. Open this right now." "Ma'am, please step away from the fridge." But she wasn't listening. She started pounding on a glass with her fists, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Give me the meat. I deserve it. My children are starving." I was about to go around the counter to stop her when I heard a crash. The glass on the fridge had cracked under her assault. And that's when Boss snapped. In all my years working here, I'd never seen him lose his cool. But this woman had pushed him too far. He grabbed the biggest knife we had, the one we use for splitting whole pigs, and came charging out of the back room. "Get out of my shop, you crazy woman." The woman's eyes went wide when she saw Boss coming after her with that huge knife. She let out a shriek that could have woken the dead, then took off running. Now, I've seen some funny runs in my day, but this took the cake. She was flailing her arms like a windmill, her legs going in all directions, and it was like watching a cartoon character come to life. The whole shop erupted in laughter as she bolted out the door, Boss hot on her heels. He chased her down the street a bit before coming back, crit-faced and puffing. "Well, that's one way to get rid of a pest." We all had a good laugh about it, but then reality set in. We had a broken fridge, a shop full of witnesses, and probably a whole bunch of viral videos in the making. I called the police while Boss started cleaning up the mess. When they arrived, everyone was more than happy to give their statements and share their videos. I've never seen so many people eager to talk to the cops before. After that, things went back to normal. Well, as normal as they could be after something like that. We had to close early to fix the fridge, but Boss didn't seem too upset about it. A few days later, one of the officers who responded to our call stopped by the shop. I was curious to hear if they caught the woman, so I asked him about it. "Any news on that crazy lady from the other day?" "Oh yeah, we found her all right. Turns out she's pulled stunts like this before at other businesses. She's facing charges for destruction of property, disturbing the peace, and attempted theft." attempted theft, but she didn't actually take anything. True, but she was trying to. And given her history, the prosecutor thinks it'll stick. Your boss is pressing charges, right? I nodded, remembering boss's face when he talked about it. He wasn't just angry about the fridge, he was upset that someone would try to take advantage of his generosity like that. Good. With all the evidence we've got, plus her priors, she's looking at some serious consequences. Might even do some time. I was satisfied at hearing that. Don't get me wrong, I really feel bad for her kids if they really were going hungry. But that's no excuse for the way she acted. As the officer was leaving, he turned back with a grin. Oh, and you might want to tell your boss to be careful with that knife of his. Chasing customers down the street isn't exactly a standard practice, you know? I left, promising to pass on the message. As I watched him leave, I couldn't help but shake my head at the whole situation. Who would have thought a regular Saturday at the butcher shop would turn into such a circus? But you know what? In a weird way, I'm glad it happened. It showed me how great our regular customers are, how much boss cares about this place, and how sometimes justice does get served, even if it takes a crazy chase scene with a butcher's knife to make it happen. I've been working at this big tech company for about 5 years now. It's a good job, pays well, and has some nice perks. One of those perks is the annual training week they send us on. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about a week away from the office in a fancy hotel. It's just that sometimes little things can really get under your skin. I remember my first training week like it was yesterday. I've been with the company for about a year and I was excited to get out of the office and learn some new skills. The hotel they put us up in was nice, way nicer than anywhere I'd usually stay. We're talking plush carpets, fancy artwork on the walls, the whole nine yards. The first day of training went well. We had breakfast at the hotel, which was included in our stay. Lunch was catered by some fancy company that brought in these elaborate sandwich platters and salads. For dinner, a bunch of us decided to go out to a nearby restaurant. I was a bit surprised when I saw some of my co-workers ordering $80 steaks and expensive wines, but they assured me it was all covered by the company. Me? I'm a simple guy. I ordered a burger and fries, and I was happy as a clam. That night I woke up around 2 a.m. feeling parched. Now, I don't know about you, but I've always been wary of drinking tap water in hotels. Call me paranoid, but I just prefer bottled water when I'm away from home. So I threw on some clothes and headed down to the lobby to grab a couple of bottles from the vending machine. $2 later, I was back in my room gulping down cool, refreshing water. I didn't think twice about it. After all, we were told all our expenses would be reimbursed. Fast forward a week after the training, and I'm back at my desk, catching up on emails when I see one from someone in the corporate office. Let's call her Karen, because, well, that's exactly who she reminded me of. The email started off polite enough, thanking me for submitting my receipts promptly. But then came the kicker. I'm writing to inform you that all your expenses will be reimbursed except for the bottled water purchased from the hotel lobby. I respond, may I ask why the water isn't covered? Is there a policy about this I wasn't aware of? I thought maybe there was some rule about only covering water with meals or something, but Karen's response made my blood boil. Your room should have been adequately accommodating for your hydration needs. Adequately accommodating? Was she suggesting I should have drunk from the tap? Or maybe I should have gone to bit thirsty? I was tempted to fire back a snarky response, but I bit my tongue. After all, it was only $2. Not worth making waves over, right? But it stuck in my craw. Here I was, being conscientious about not splurging on expensive meals like some of my coworkers, and I was getting grief over $2 worth of water. For the next year, that incident stayed with me. Every time I passed the water cooler at work, I think about Karen and her adequately accommodating comment. It was like a pimple in my shoe, small but constantly irritating. When the next annual training rolled around, I had a plan. Oh, I was going to follow the rules all right, but I was going to make sure Karen understood just how adequately accommodating I could be. The first night of training, I suggested to my coworkers that we hit up this fancy steakhouse for dinner. They were all for it. After all, the company was footing the bill. We walked into the place, all dark wood and leather booth. It was a kind of menu where if you have to ask the price, you can't afford it. My co-workers ordered their usual extravagant meals, lobster, prime rib, you name it. When it came to my turn, I smiled at the waiter. I'll have a New York strip, medium rare, and could I get 2 bottles of your finest still water to go with that? Certainly, sir. Would you like the large or small bottles? Oh, large. Definitely. And I'll be taking those back to my room with me, if that's alright. My co-workers looked at me a bit oddly, but nobody said anything. The meal was great, but the best part was when the waiter brought out those 2 large glass bottles of water. Each one was about the size of a wine bottle, with a fancy label proclaiming it to be sourced from some artesian spring in the Alps or something. As we were leaving, I made sure to grab those bottles. My co-worker, let's call him Bob, finally asked what was up. What's with the water, man? You turning into a health nut or something? Oh, just making sure I'm adequately accommodated for the week. I couldn't keep the grin off my face as I carried those bottles back to my room. Each one had cost about $17, but I knew they would be covered because they were purchased with my meal. The next morning at breakfast, I made a point of conspicuously pouring myself a glass from one of my fancy bottles. Another co-worker raised an eyebrow. Isn't there water at the breakfast buffet? Oh, sure, but I like to be prepared. You never know when you might need some adequately accommodating hydration. For the rest of the week, I made sure to order at least 1 bottle of expensive water with every dinner. By the time we checked out, I had quite the collection in my room. When I got back to the office, I submitted my expense report with a smile. A week later, I got the usual email from Karen. All your expenses have been approved for reimbursement. However, I couldn't help but notice a large number of bottled water purchases. While these are covered as they are part of your meals, I hope you understand that such excessive spending is not in the spirit of our expense policy. I couldn't resist replying, I completely understand, Karen. I just wanted to ensure I was adequately accommodated throughout my stay. After all, hydration is important, and I wouldn't want to burden the hotel's plumbing system unnecessarily. Rest assured, not a drop of that water went to waste. In fact, I found it so refreshing that I'm considering suggesting we stock it in our office. What do you think? I never got a reply to that email, but the next year when the training information packet went out, there was a new clause. Bottled water purchases are limited to 1 per meal, with a maximum cost of $5 per bottle. Any additional water needs should be met using the facilities provided in your hotel room or the complimentary water stations throughout the hotel. I had to laugh. It seems Karen had learned her lesson about being too specific with the rules. As for me, well, I still bring my own reusable water bottle to these trainings now. It's better for the environment after all. I've been coming to this diner with my husband every Friday for years. It's our way to unwind after a long week. Me being a high school teacher, I really need it. This Friday started like any other until I heard a loud voice. I looked around and saw a woman 3 tables away having a video call on her phone, which was propped against her water glass. She was talking so loudly about her sister's wedding that I could hear every word. At first, I tried to ignore it, but it just got more annoying. Finally, I'd had enough. I stood up and walked over to their table. The woman barely noticed me approach, so I leaned right over, putting my face in front of her phone's camera. Hi there, how are you? I figured since I could hear your entire conversation from my table, I might as well introduce myself. I'm Nancy, and it's so nice to meet you. The woman on the call looked shocked. The woman at the table finally looked up at me, mouth open. Excuse me, what do you think you're doing? Oh, I'm just joining in. After all, you've been sharing it with the entire restaurant. I thought it would be rude not to say hello. This is a private call. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, 3 tables away, it certainly doesn't sound private. Her dining companion looked mortified, trying to sink into his seat. You have no right to interrupt my call, and you have no right to disrupt everyone's meal with your loud conversation. If it's so important, maybe step outside or wait until you're home. I went back to my table. The woman ended her call shortly after, shooting me dirty looks for the rest of the meal. As we were leaving, I made sure to walk past her table one last time. Hope you enjoyed your meal. And remember, indoor voices are for indoors. The look on her face was priceless. Sometimes a little sass goes a long way in teaching people some manners.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.